This MFL MarMac Coach Conversation brought to you by Havlicek Trucking, Meyer Auto Service, and Birdnow Chevrolet. Head Coach Dan Anderson joining us. And Dan, I know before we get to talking about the game against Dyersville Beckman, you ended up having a 2 hour weather delay and kicking off about 9 o'clock last Friday night. When it comes to dealing with situations like that, is it possible to have a regular protocol in dealing with weather, or do you have to just kind of roll with the punches that you're given?
Yeah, you just got to roll with the punches, because you just got to keep checking in with the officials and your athletic directors, and um, that lightning. We didn't have any strikes close to us, but it just kept hanging up there to our north, up towards walk on direction, and up to Volney north of us, 10 miles, 8 miles, and it was kind of frustrating because it was not, it rained and then there was, lightning to the north, but it wasn't anywhere close. But we obviously still had to sit and wait and sit and wait. And every time it flashes, you have to wait another half hour. So, we finally got going a little after 9 o'clock, and that's just one of those things we talk about to the kids all the time. Control what you can control, and the things you can't control, you just got to roll with the punches. And we try to keep them relaxed, stay focused for that big game. And I thought our kids did a pretty good job of that.
And Beckman ended up getting you 28 to 14 after watching it and looking at the film. What were the takeaways?
We played pretty well. There was 14-14 at half, and I believe it was still 14-14 right at the tail end of the third quarter. They scored a couple there late in the game. Um, you know, they're a good football team, and they've got a lot of big kids. They got more depth. They got more experience than us. But our kids fought, and at the beginning of the year, our kids had that edge because we've had it for years. I mean, our kids expect to win, and then when Cresco beat us, and we had quite a few injuries going into that Cresco game, and even more after Clayton Ridge, our kids lost that edge. They did. They lost their mojo, and it took a little while to get back. And they still had it, but they just had to find it, and they found it on Friday night. I know that the outcome wasn't what we wanted. We lost 28-14, but for three strong quarters, it was back and forth, physical slugfest with a big physical Beckman team who was ranked, and our kids, they got their mojo back. They believe they can win. We lost it for a few games there with all those injuries and just things were out of whack, but they're starting to find it again, and we're starting to get a few kids healthy again. So hopefully we can springboard from the good things we saw on Friday night into our next game.
And I know you had to throw some kids in a lineup a few games ago that probably weren't expecting to play as much as they were at that time. Are they getting to a comfort level on the varsity level that their confidence is increasing and their play is increasing?
Yeah, they are, and like we had said before, there's a lot of kids that would probably have never gotten a varsity snap this year, but it's just the situation, that we were dealt with all those injuries. Kids got the experience. Now we're getting a few kids back that were injured. Still have some kids out, and some kids will be, like we said, will be out the whole year probably. But we got a couple of them back, and it made a big difference. Having Blake Schutte back at fullback and middle linebacker, I think he had 12 or 13 tackles, and just you can't replace that. I mean, kids will give a good effort, and the guy that backs him up, and the guys that are trying to fill in his spot. The fact is, you know, we've got Blake Schutte, and he's the only Blake Schutte we have. He's a heck of a tackler, and he's got a nose for the ball. And it was good to have him back on Friday night. It was good to have Decker back running the ball again. He scored a touchdown for us, and you have his speed back. So, but those other guys that filled in did a great job, and they got that experience. And now, if we have to rotate them in, they're not going to be probably nearly as nervous, and they're going to be ready for the task.
As everyone knows, running the ball is going to be your bread and butter. You look at the stat sheet from the other night: 174 yards rushing and 4.7 yards per carry. Those are numbers that probably make you smile, correct?
Sure. Yeah. And again, I mean, I think our longest run, we might have had a couple of 20-yard runs, but again, those stats aren't really inflated. We didn't have any big 60, 70-yard runs. And so, we were just grinding it out against a big physical team in Beckman, and we're still able to move the ball. We're undersized on our line. We've got, our starting guards are 155 and 180 pounds. And most of the teams we're seeing, those guys are, 200 to 260, or more. So, I mean, those guys still use good technique, and they can still move guys with our blocking schemes. It's all about angles for us. It's not blocking the guy head up on you. It's gap blocking scheme. So down, down, kick out, and using our speed to create angles. And those guys do a great job of it. We're still, even though we're undersized up front, we're still moving the ball just like we would any other year running the ball.
Sounds like a, quote from a guy you and I both respect. It's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog, right?
Oh yeah, I think I've heard that a few times from Coach Post. Yeah.
And this week you got Lisbon coming to town. What are you expecting Friday night?
Well, kind of in the same boat as us. They graduated a whole slew of guys from last year. I think they only returned a couple of guys starters from last year's team. They were, I think, 10-1 last year and 9-2 the year before, so they've got a good tradition. But again, they did graduate a lot of guys, and so did we. They've had a rough start, just like we have. They've played a couple pretty good games against Waterloo, Columbus, and East Buck, but then they got beat pretty soundly last week against Cascade. But they did have their best football player out. He didn't play in the game. I saw him limping in the Columbus game, and then last week against Cascade he didn't play. But their running back, 6'3", 210. He's a state track type guy. Lisbon's got an awesome track program, one of the best in the state of Iowa, and so they've always got speed down there. So they've got a fast quarterback. They've got a big running back that's really fast. I don't know if he'll play this week. He didn't play last week, but he's a tough kid. You can tell on film he runs all over the field. I'm sure if he can play it all, he'll be back in the lineup again. And they just I've seen on film that last week they did a lot of unbalanced and tackle over. So again, kind of like when we saw Cresco, we had to expect be aware of when they shift a tackle over to one side and make our adjustments and just be aware of those things and make sure that we're not outflanked on one side.
All right, Coach. Hopefully, you can keep taking those steps forward, keep the positivity going, and hopefully, next Tuesday we can talk about a W. Keep your kids healthy. We wish you best of luck.
All right. Thank you, Darren.
Dan Anderson, head coach of the MFL MarMac Bulldogs, brought to you by Birdnow Chevrolet, Meyer Auto Service, and Havlicek Trucking.